I mean, it's the identity I wanted to have for myself when I was a child, and it's the identity I have for myself now. It's given me the ability to see problems that I may not have been able to see in the past and know how to get solutions to those problems. A legal education gives you a way of thinking about the world and viewing the world that I think is unique to any other profession, and analyzing problems. So, again, I cannot imagine myself doing anything else, and I feel like just such a fortunate person to be able to be a lawyer, be a judge, and be a Kansas lawyer. I can never remember a time in my life that I did not want to go to law school. Many attorneys relate their history to To Kill a Mockingbird. Many attorneys in my age bracket, at least, look at that movie or that book as a turning point. And I remember really ever since seeing that movie wanting to be Atticus Finch and be an attorney and help people that no one else would help. And so I really can't remember ever wanting to do anything else. And watching other lawyers on TV and seeing how they were arguing their case. And of course, like many people who became attorneys, my family always said, "You're a great arguer, you should be a lawyer." And so that kind of plants that idea in your head. But I just saw it as, I wanted to change the world, and I saw that as an education that would be needed to change the world. No one in my family had ever graduated from college, so I think they kind of said, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, you can do that." And I remember my mother telling me, you can get a good secretarial job, or so they didn't dissuade me, but there never seemed to be a lot of confidence that it would happen. So but I was never dissuaded. I went to the University of Kansas that had a 2-year program or a 3-year program. And the 2-year program, you went straight through the summers. So you generally didn't work at a law firm during the summers, or you just went straight through school and you could get through faster that way. I went through on a 2-year track because I didn't have the money to go any longer. I mean, that was basically it. It's like, oh, I can go in 2 years and not have to pay for a 3rd year. I think I'll take that option. I was very naive. I don't remember really I was worried about whether my grades would be good enough to get in. And once, I was in my 3rd year of college, it became pretty clear that they were going to be good enough to get in. I didn't really worry, and I was going to stay in this area because I couldn't afford to go anywhere out of state. I don't really remember being afraid until I started. And then I saw so many people that had lawyers in their family, knew the lingo, knew what was going on, and I felt completely like a fish out of water. How, people were talking about preparing to write for law review, and what is law review? I was just totally, I thought, I did really good in college, I'm going to do really good in law school. And then you realize that you were there with an entire class of people that did really good in college. And it's a whole new standard. So, I got very insecure and afraid once I got there. I remember doing nothing else but being in the library all the time, constantly trying to read and keep up, and believing that, being terrified of ever being called out of class, and being convinced that everyone in the class knew what was going on except me. I was the only idiot. And so, there's just a lot of self-doubt, and the law professors don't always do a lot to encourage self-confidence, but they were all very nice. I never felt any different because I was a woman. I never felt they treated us any differently. Our law school class at KU was about 25% women, I believe. It had gotten, it was moving up by the time I got there. I got there in 1979. I did not feel that male peers treated us really any differently in law school. I had a good relationship with my peers. It was not until I got out of law school with the practicing bar and the older male attorneys in the bar that it became very obvious to me that they felt I was different. So, But law school, I felt it was a very good experience, and I never felt that the male attorneys in the class treated us any differently. The thing that stands out to me the most during my law school years was probably just the camaraderie with the other students and the connections you made with those students and continue to have friendships with today. And the excitement. I do remember the excitement of thinking, I'm really going to be an attorney and I'm going to walk out of these doors and I'm going to practice law. And that was very exciting and heady. And I do remember graduation day. I remember my parents being there so proud. And my husband was there. I was married at the time. So I remember it being just the culmination of a dream. This is what I always wanted to do, and I've made that goal. I was a police legal advisor, so I advised police officers on legal issues. That was my first fear, that I had this predominantly male police force. I think they only had 2 women on the force, if that many at the time. How are they going to react to me, this 24-year-old, woman, telling them what the law is and telling them what they can and can't do? They were wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better environment. They were welcoming. That was not a problem. But when I went in to practice law, the problem really came with the older, more established attorneys that I think viewed women as somewhat of a threat, and many would express that they felt that women weren't suited for litigation. When I was in law school and graduated from law school, law firms weren't knocking down the doors for us. There were some women got jobs at law firms, but not a lot. Most women went to work for government agencies, municipalities, the federal government, because those entities were hiring them without a second thought, and so that's where a lot of us landed. And I remember a judge telling me one time that he thought it was good that women were working for government, and that was probably suited for them because they really weren't suited for the rigors of a law practice, and that he thought we were just where we needed to be. And as a result, working as in-house counsel somewhere or working for the government, for an agency, for a city, whatever, was viewed as a lesser form of practicing law. And so their expectations of us, I think, were lower. They didn't think we had the same education or the same, it was very different. And some of them, some were very welcoming. Some male members of the bar were very welcoming and served as mentors to me. Others were just nasty. I mean, there's no other way to describe it as. And I think part of that came from the fact not only that they viewed women as somehow threatening their profession, but just the language of men and women and how we're viewed. One of my favorite quotes is Marlo Thomas, actually, who was a huge feminist person in the 70s and 80s, who said that a man is ruthless. A man has to be Joe McCarthy to be ruthless. All a woman has to do is put you on hold. So whenever we were tough in a lawsuit or stood our ground or wouldn't budge, we weren't being good advocates. We were being the B word. I mean, that was pretty much so you're viewed, you would do the same behavior, but it's viewed totally differently. And so I don't know if it was just part of that whole culture of women doing the same thing is viewed differently, fed into the fact that we're somehow not as good to practice with as a fellow man would be. But it was just it's always the older members of the bar, never the younger, that seemed to have the most trouble. Well, when I was with the City of Overland Park, there were 2 women that worked as prosecutors, and I think Jan Russell was in the district attorney's office. She may have been the only woman there at the time. There weren't many women prosecutors out there, and we were on the city level, not the state level. But there were attorneys that whenever they had to come to Overland Park Municipal Court, where the two women prosecutors were, they had a very derogatory name for going to that court. Well, we're going to, I don't know if I should even say it on camera, but they called it cunt court. We're going to cunt court today. And that became the derogatory term used to come to a court that had two women attorneys. In front of the city council, this was when I was an assistant city attorney, I was in front of the city council. I believe I was pregnant with one of my children. And I was going over a smoking ordinance that the city council was thinking of passing, and smoking ordinances were still very, very controversial at that time. So they had opponents and proponents of the ordinance come up and speak before the city council. And an opponent of the ordinance got up and stated his opposition to the ordinance, and then said, and by the way, I think that Karen Arnold-Burger over there ought to be home folding diapers where she belongs. So it was out there. How dare she sit here and tell you, city council, that you should adopt this ordinance when she should be home folding diapers. There was kind of a gasp in the room. I just think watching other judges and thinking I feel I could do that, and I think I could be fair. I mean, it's another goal that lots of attorneys aspire, that would be the kind of the epitome of my profession if I could be a judge. I was a municipal judge, so I presided over only criminal cases and only misdemeanor cases as a judge for the city of Overland Park. I think they had to respect the office of judge, so I don't believe they treated me any differently, but I think they viewed my behavior differently. Again, back to the same communication issues. I think they viewed my behavior differently than they would if it were a man. Eventually able to gain the respect of attorneys pretty quickly. They knew I understood the law. They knew I would be thoughtful in their determination. But the point is, as a woman, you have to earn that. As a man, you come to the job with that credibility already in place, and as a woman, you have to earn that before them for some reason. The difference between being an appellate judge and a municipal judge is the difference between being a trial judge and an appellate judge, and that is, and especially in a municipal court, it's a high volume court. You're on the bench all day long making decision after decision, not a lot of time to contemplate, and all in a pretty limited area. Of course, as an appellate judge, I'm hearing cases in all different areas, and I have lots of time to think. Not as much time as I would like sometimes to think about cases, but more time to be reflective and collaborative. I love the fact that I have two other colleagues to work on a decision with instead of being the sole decider. It's good, it's fast to be the sole decider, but it's nice to be able to have the comfort of two other people to assist in that decision. You're in the public eye all the time, so your life changes to some extent because you can't be involved in things that maybe you could be involved in as a practicing attorney. You're always conscious of the fact of your position, and so that certainly makes it unique. The fact that you're deciding, you get to be the final arbiter of the cases, of course, makes it very unique. But you're still researching and writing and speaking just as you do as an attorney. You're simply not advocating for a particular position.